Thank you for joining us again here on another week of Get Ready News. I'm Mark Lindsted. This is my brother David Lindsted, and we like to cover the news from a biblical viewpoint.
Yeah, we like to look at what's going on in the world, take the Bible and look at the Bible and compare the two and see if we can see something between the two and how they compare to each other.
Now, we're going to take a few headlines from earlier this week. Now, I know usually our show comes out on Saturday, but I'll actually be traveling this weekend to Believers Bible Conference in North Carolina. So we're going to record this a little early in the week, so our headlines might be a little ahead of time or behind time.
Yeah, most of them should work out anyway. The Bible's really good at covering things. Even though it's written over 2,000 years ago, it's still accurate and still answers questions for today. So
yeah. Well, one of the headlines I saw here was Biden commutes the sentences of 37 death row inmates.
It's amazing to me the damage that Biden is doing on his way out. And I say Biden, but I don't think Biden is actually home.
Yep. You're right.
I think that whoever's controlling the Biden administration, and that's not Kamala.
No.
I think she's just as bad as Joe. The problem is Joe has an excuse.
Well, I think they're just as bad as each other because they're
Yes.
both deep state controlled puppets.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where we see the difference in Trump. He can't be controlled by the deep state. Now, don't get me wrong, though. We could be taken for a ride here. He could be on board with them. It just looks like he's not. You never know what's going to happen.
I agree with that 100%. Right now, I'm behind Trump and what his ideas and what he wants to do are.
Yeah.
But we don't know the real. We don't know the real Donald Trump. We don't know the real anything. You know.
Well, and I think that this quote from President Biden sums up the exact reason why they lost this election. He says, "In good conscience, I cannot stand back and let a new administration resume executions that I halted." So, wait a minute. The people have placed execution on the block.
Right.
The person was tried and found guilty and the sentence to be execution. He stopped the execution, so he stopped the will of the people. And then now that a president's coming back into power to say, I want the will of the people to be carried out, he says, now I'm going to commute the sentence so that the will of the people can never be carried out.
Yeah. And I think this is why they lost.
Yeah.
I think that the Democratic Party is so far disconnected from what real people want. And I found it interesting. I was watching a program and they said, the problem we had, the reason that we lost is because we didn't have time to package what it is that we're selling. Well, the problem is what you're selling, nobody wants.
Yeah. Well, at one time, the Democrat Party, and when I say that, I mean the people of the party, not the leaders of the party, were for the people and not the man.
Yes.
But I think the leadership of the Democrat Party has done a great job of hiding the fact that they are the man that wants to fight the man.
Exactly. I agree with that. Looking back, now we have 20/20 vision as you look back. And you see nothing but big government and controlling those people that put their faith in the system.
You bet.
And, I thought it was funny. My son came to me and he says, I know some people that have been lifelong Democrats, and today they back the man. I mean, it's obvious that they're backing the man, and yet they're still diehard Democrats because they think they're against the system.
Yeah, well, I mean, you look at the lies that have been propagated by the Democratic Party for so long, like they're the party of freedom.
Right.
Well, no, they're the party of slavery.
Yes.
They're the party of women's rights. No, they're the party that voted against women to have rights. And we see this where they've duped their base into thinking that they're for the little people when really the Democrat Party is the man. They're the one that you're fighting against. And one of the best analogies of this I've ever seen was, you think of all the movies we watch. Star Wars. Who did you root for in Star Wars?
For the Resistance.
The Resistance. You think of Divergent. Who do you root for in Divergent?
Resistance.
You think of the Hunger Games. Who do you root for in the Hunger Games?
Resistance.
In real life, who do you root for? the man.
The man.
It's such a strange thing. You could see it in a movie. You could depict it in a movie. You could say, oh, yes, that's wrong. But when it comes to real life, they can't seem to get over the fact of what they've been told versus what they see.
Yeah. And something else I always thought was a funny comment, and the more I see it and the more I listen to it, the more I think it's true. Whatever the Democrats are accusing you of, they are doing it. And, if they're accusing you of being slavers, guess what?
Yeah.
They're probably the slavers.
Well, my favorite part of that was, whenever they're pointing at you, there's three fingers pointing right back at them. Yeah. And the interesting part is that that's been a big-time proponent of those who want to be in socialism for a long time. Accuse, 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 accuse.
Yeah, they're trying to do, in my mind, they're trying to do like a Howard Piven move where they're trying to force two things against each other, and make it so that you compromise. Yeah. And I found that interesting in school. We started down this road of how to compromise, and there comes a point in time where you can't compromise.
Yeah, and especially when it comes to moral things, and we could see them right now. It's almost like the art of the deal. Well, beg for craziness so that they'll accept the littleness, the small thing that you really want.
And we see that in the Middle East.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing for, I'm going to use the word, I don't agree with it, but the Palestinians. Yeah. And those Iranians and stuff like that, they come at you with something big so that you accept a smaller form of it.
Well, and it's crazy. And the funny thing is to mention some of these movies and how we could see that you should be for the resistance and not the man. Funny enough, is it the Met Gala?
Oh yeah,
that basically look like they're wearing the same outfits of the man from the Hunger Games, is it? And most of these people are liberal Democrat people dressed exactly like the oppressors of the movie and saying the things that the oppressors say.
And they're saying them as if they're saying something great. Yeah. As if they're doing something awesome.
Well, I'd look at it, it's just so crazy to me to see something on a movie screen that people can discern, but in real life they can't. And I don't know, just my opinion is, I'll say my opinion because I don't want to put it in anybody else's mouth, but there's no one more racist than a liberal.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because a liberal will come to somebody and say, because of your skin color, you can't do this without me helping you do it.
Absolutely. And I don't think they understand how racist that is. Yeah. And I find it interesting. We watched that movie by Matt Walsh.
Oh, yeah.
Am I a Racist? Which is a fantastic movie, a very, very good movie. And I don't think that these people understand how racist they are, and their thoughts and the way they do things are the very. What was the one statement? In order to fight racism, you have to have racism.
Yeah, yeah.
It was just like I don't know where people get these ideas.
Well, what was that one lady? She wrote the book White
Fragility.
White Fragility. They found out later that she plagiarized from black authors. But the funniest part of that whole scene was when they got her to pay reparations on site to his producers. Yep. And I'm thinking to myself, how racist do you have to be to think that I need to take $30 out of my pocket because you just simply have had to deal with things because of my ancestors and your ancestors, and I need to give you money because you're just behind.
Yeah. It just boggles the mind that people have these thoughts, that they could say, well, more than likely, since you're white, your ancestors probably own. Well, I'm going to tell you something. There's a slavery problem in the world today. Yeah. There is a massive.
More than ever.
Ever. Huge. And it comes from a part of the world that people don't want to talk about.
Yeah. Well, it comes from a part of the world where people are considered less valuable if you're not part of a certain party.
Exactly. And it comes from people that aren't necessarily white. Yep. But to try to hold somebody accountable for something that may and may not have happened hundreds of years ago by what may and may not have been your ancestor is ludicrous.
Well, here's my question. So you've got somebody, I can't remember the name of the lady. She was on that show on PBS where they trace your roots.
Oh yeah, the genealogy show.
Yeah. And she was a black woman, and she found out that she was descendant from people of the Mayflower and slave owners.
Yep.
So here's my question. If you're going to pay reparations, does she pay her left hand to her right hand?
Does she pay herself?
It's such a crazy idea to think of this, but the absurdity of our administration is that way. It really, I wanted to let this bleed right into the next idea here. What has Kamala Harris been up to?
That's a good question. She came out and she kind of had this little thing about don't let anybody take your joy, and it sounded like
we're not done fighting.
We're not done fighting. We haven't seen her in forever.
I'm going to work till the very last day tomorrow. I'm going to Hawaii on vacation.
Yeah, she's been gone, but I think that deep down inside, the Democrats want her to be gone.
Oh yeah. She's a detriment to the party for them. But what we're seeing here is exactly what you told me earlier. We're seeing a party, what it looks like to have a government that runs a government with just saying cliches rather than actually doing anything.
Yeah, it's kind of like, and I thought this was absolutely hilarious. We're going to turn the page.
Yeah.
We're going to not look, I think Tim Walz got up there and said something about, we're not looking back at the last 4 years. We're looking forward.
Yeah.
Well, that's just something people say when they're trying to get elected about the other party.
Yes.
Well, it's his own party.
Yeah.
It was his own policies they're going to go right back to. And all they're doing is just repeating lines to get people to say, "Oh, look, they mean something. They're doing something."
Well, you look at the student loan forgiveness. I think that was solely just to win votes.
Yes, absolutely.
They knew that there's no way that they could use the federal government to pay back someone's student loans.
Right.
But if they say it loud enough, proclaim it loud enough, and tell you it's going to happen, they're going to get your vote.
Yep.
And then we see just what was this 43 minutes ago, CNBC, Biden administration withdraws student loan forgiveness plans.
It's no longer beneficial. It doesn't matter now.
Yeah.
The other thing I found interesting about the student loans was they blocked him. The Supreme Court blocked him.
Yeah.
And then he tried to find a way around it.
Yeah.
And this is all to garner votes.
Yes.
It had nothing to do with what is the impact of our economy if we do that.
Well, and here's what I can tell you right now. Let's just say they think they found a way around it to do it. He's withdrawing it now. Why? Because in 4 years, they want to use that as a way to get your vote. Not that they're going to do it for the good of you. They're going to do it to control you.
Exactly.
And I think it's just a silliness to think about forgiving someone's, student loan to get their vote. Okay, how about you forgive my mortgage to get my vote?
Yeah. Well, what about all those people that already paid their loan off?
Yeah.
Well, do they get reimbursed for that?
Well, and it's just like when Harris said, we're going to give each new home buyer $25,000 to help buy their home. Guess what happened to the price of homes?
It went up $25,000.
Yeah,
exactly.
I would, if I was selling a house for $300,000, it's now $325,000. Thank you for the extra cash, because guess what? Doing that's going to raise the inflation, so the money's worthless anyway at that point. It may be a $5,000 adder at that time.
Didn't we have that same problem? We did cash for clunkers. Wasn't it all of a sudden the used car market exploded and became so expensive that you couldn't buy a car unless you could trade a car in.
Yep. Yeah, it's crazy. But, we talk about the strangeness of people falling for this stuff. Yeah. But you know what? They're out there in the open. They're really not behind closed doors. No. I mean, you look at this last lady who I'm trying to remember where she's a representative from. I think it was, I want to say Massachusetts, but I could be wrong. The purple hair lady.
Oh, my word.
That looks just like the Hunger Games, and she's saying, we got to tell President Musk no.
Yeah, see, I look at that and I think, who in their right mind voted this person to represent them in government?
Yeah. Well, how long has AOC been Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. How long has she been? 5-6 years now?
At least, yeah.
So how do you turn $155,000 a year into a net worth of $30 million?
Now that's a very good question. Everyone, I don't care if it's an R or a D.
Yeah.
All of these guys seem to get rich
Yep.
when they go to government. In
Without
fact,
a doubt.
I think I saw something, and I don't know how accurate it is, so I'll say it with a grain of salt here. But they were showing the values of the incoming presidents and the values of the outgoing president.
Yep.
And even Kamala Harris has exponentially increased her wealth. And there was one president that did not.
Oh, you mean the one that's going to take office on the 20th?
Yep. He was the only one that did not increase himself in that office.
It's interesting to see, and that's the one that people hate the most.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
That just proves to me that he's not about the same game they are. He's there, in my opinion, for the people. They're there for themselves.
Yeah, I think that it's all about power.
Yeah.
And it's all about money.
Power, control, money, you name it.
And I think Trump has no desire in that. Not that he doesn't desire money, he doesn't desire power. And he's getting power and money per se by doing this. But his thing is he wants to promote America and keep America going, where the other ones don't care. I don't think they care one way or another.
Well, I think
as long as they're in power.
I think that they would rather be in lockstep with the global powers, because when the globalism takes over, they want to be in power rather than a subject of the globalism.
Oh, I agree with that. I think that if you can't beat them, join them.
Yeah.
And I think that that's awfully attractive if you look at it the right way.
Maybe if you know what they're going to do to the lowerlings, run as fast as you can to join them so you're not an underling.
Yes. Try to make yourself bigger than you are, and to promote them and to be in their good graces.
But being fooled is not solely a problem in our political and our daily lives. Look at our church lives.
Oh, it's unbelievable the amount of rubbish that I see out there, and the amount of I don't know if I want to say heresy, but absolute foolishness that's happening.
Well, I don't know that it's open heresy as the fact that they know it. I think they're so full of deception and lies that they don't even have a clue that they're being heretics.
You know, one of the things I used to think of, and this kind of leads me to the thought of, how could an antichrist come in and garner all of the love and support of everybody? Because that has to happen for him to take over.
Yeah.
And I look at these people, and people just fall for anything. I don't see anybody reading their Bible anymore. I don't see anybody participating in anything to extend their knowledge on something. They're just following.
Sure. Well, okay. I gotta say it. We have modern churches singing Madonna songs as worship songs.
Yeah, I saw that.
We got a woman that's openly anti-Christian, sings the most filthy songs you can think of. In fact, this song is about a sexual act.
Yes,
and they're singing it thinking it's a worship song about prayer.
Yeah, it absolutely blows me away that we could be this ignorant.
Yeah.
That and you know that's got to make her laugh, because I think she is very anti-Christian.
Yeah.
And for her stuff to be used like that is beyond wow.
Well, and I think that this goes solely, I start looking at churches and the discernment of who should be leading these churches.
Yes.
And do they fit the qualifications of a deacon? Do they fit the qualifications of an elder? Do they fit the qualifications of a pastor?
Yeah.
And you say, well, we have a worship pastor, and he just really needs to be able to play music and sing well. No, he needs some discernment.
Yeah.
Because this is what happens when they don't have discernment.
You know, I kind of look at some of the bigger churches anymore. Those leadership roles are a stepping stone for you to get into a different role.
Yeah.
It used to be that, you know, men got in those roles because they cared about the church.
Yes.
And they wanted to build the church up. And now those are stepping stones for other things. And I've seen a lot of these programs they put on with the smoke and the mirrors. And I think that all of this is the worship leaders about themselves.
Yeah.
In fact, I saw one where they were singing Imagine in church.
Yeah.
And that is the most anti-God song ever.
Yeah. Well, and then we saw last year, I think one of the worship leaders came swinging in on a wrecking ball, singing a Miley Cyrus song.
Yeah, absolutely crazy.
And then we saw last Super Bowl a church kick a Bible like a football. I mean, this is where we're at. But in Matthew 24, it says that even the elect would be deceived by the things that are happening. And we can see that. I think we can see. I think I see churches now who were fundamental, wonderful churches who have grown to these larger numbers, and instead of preaching truth, they're preaching things that tickle ears, and they're becoming entertainment. And that's why they're growing exponentially. 20, 30, 40,000 followers, budgets of millions and millions of dollars. But then we find out that some of these, even Southern Baptist Convention came out and stole a bunch of money from one of the churches. I can't remember the name of that church in Washington, where they found out that the pastor was behind the scenes making them a denomination, but not a denomination, even though their constitution says they're not allowed to be a denomination.
Right. He was trying to put them in the Southern Baptist Convention.
And he paid millions to the Southern Baptist Convention for this. So it's not like Protestantism is immune to this.
No.
And we see this as it's talking in Matthew 24, that even the elect, if they would be allowed to stay, would be deceived.
And, the other thing is, I think what we've done is we've taken church and we've diluted it so much that an unsaved person can sit in church and not be uncomfortable and feel like they're part of a club.
Yeah.
And feel like they're part of a good union.
I checked the box. I feel good because I checked my church box for the week.
And then I see that you could take all these church and loop them together into a one world government. We could have a one world church very easily through this.
Yeah. Well, and the apostasy, I think, is being carried out by some people who aren't learned enough to realize they're in heresy and apostasy.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of videos, and I call them car scholars because they, for some reason, they have these epiphanies in their car, and they want to talk about things from their steering wheel. But it's amazing that one of the things that the internet and this has done is it's allowed anybody to say anything about anything, no matter what your opinion is.
Yeah.
No matter what the truth is, you could just come out and say it.
Well, the modern theologian, we'll put it this way, is not a learned theologian.
Right.
It's a YouTube theologian.
There you go. And the other thing I find interesting is, back in the 80s and 90s, if I wanted to find something out, I had to go research it. I'd have to go and pull out truthful books and read about it. And nowadays, I can go search on the internet, and the problem is the internet doesn't always give you the truthful answer on anything.
Sure.
And you can't prove it one way or the other. But for a society that thought having information at its fingertips would make things better and people smarter and learned, it's done the reverse.
Sure. Well, it's a funny thing about these car theologians. If you go back and look at my sermon from this last week, I spoke a Christmas message out of Hebrews, which sounds crazy. But if you look at Hebrews chapter 5 and verse 9, it says, and being made perfect, he became the author of eternal salvation unto all them that obey him. Well, you turn to chapter 12, verse 2, it says, looking into Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. And most people would look at that and say, okay, he's the author, and let it go. But to really get into the depths of this, you understand that these are two separate Greek words, both translated as author. And where does this come out to be Christmas? Well, here we are. In chapter 12, verse 2, it says, looking into Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. Meaning he was the originator, he was the writer. Before the foundations of the earth, he said, I'm going to have to save them, and this is the way I'm going to do it. Well, if you look at the Greek word in chapter 5, it says, and he being made perfect became the author of eternal salvation. That's itetos, and that means the causation. So at the first advent, at his birth, he physically came to earth and caused salvation to become about.
Right.
So there's the difference. But most of your core theologians aren't going to get that way, are they?
No, and they just normally just repeat other things they've heard other places. It's kind of like, we were talking about the Democrats, and I'm sure that Republicans do this too to an extent. They just repeat talking points.
Yeah.
We don't actually have a debate. We don't actually think. We just repeat what other people say.
Sure.
And it's easy for someone to say, well, I heard somewhere that blah, 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 and it becomes true, Well, the second part of Romans 7 is when Paul, before he was saved.
Yeah.
Where did you even get that? I mean, are you, I like to say some of these guys are educated beyond their intelligence.
Yeah. Well, when was Romans written? Let me see. But my Bible, it does a good job of putting a headline in here to tell me kind of when. Around 60 AD. So when was he converted?
3 years before that?
Yeah. So was written when?
Yeah.
Before he was saved? No. Why would he have even written any scripture before he was saved?
Yeah.
Before he had the Holy Spirit guiding him what to write, how could you say he wrote any scripture?
I had a guy ask me about that, and I said, well, I pray to God that it's after.
Yeah.
Because if it's before and Paul lived a perfect life after, then you have to live a perfect life.
Ooh, that hurts.
If you can't say amen, say ouch.
Well, that's what, I put up a little reel this last week. It was kind of funny. It was a girl showing her horse how to jump a hurdle. The horse wouldn't jump over it. And I put it in reference to Torah followers. It's easy to keep the law. She goes over and says, it's easy to jump this. And she jumps over it and trips and falls flat on her face. And that's exactly what I think of when I see people saying, follow the law, it's easy.
Yeah.
Well, the law is there as a schoolmaster.
Right. No one is saved by following the law.
No.
The law was to show you have a problem.
Yeah, yeah. And he didn't take away the law. He fulfilled the law.
Yes.
So it's such an interesting thing to see, but you won't get a lot of that from these car theologians, as we like to call them. Well, thanks for joining us this week, and hopefully you'll find some value in what we've had to say here. And if you haven't placed your trust in Jesus as your personal Savior, I pray that you do. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.